Hey there, folks. Welcome back to Full Spectrum Frontiers, where we explore the vast and often chaotic interplay of conflict, national security, and the society we call home. I'm your host, Bennett Tanton, and today we're diving into a question that's as heavy as it is crucial. What does World War III look like? And before you roll your eyes thinking, here we go, another doom and gloom podcast, let me assure you this episode isn't about fear-mongering. It's about equipping you with the knowledge to understand the world around you and hopefully prepare for what might be coming. Now, I know the term World War III gets tossed around more than a football on Thanksgiving, but hear me out. We're not talking about tanks rolling into Normandy again or the trenches of Verdun 2.0. Oh no, this isn't your grandpa's war, or even your dad's. WW3 will be fought with drones in the air, algorithms on the internet, and sanctions hitting economies harder than missiles hit bunkers. If you think it's just soldiers on the front lines, you're about to have your mind blown. Spoiler alert, we're all in the trenches now. Yes, even you sipping your coffee at 8 a.m. while scrolling Instagram. So, why this topic, and why now? Look at the world. Russia and Ukraine are in an ongoing slugfest. Israel, Hamas, and Hezbollah have reignited age-old conflicts. China is eyeing Taiwan like it's the last slice of pizza at a party. Meanwhile, the U.S. border is as porous as Swiss cheese. All of these situations are threads in a much larger and frankly terrifying tapestry. The global chessboard is getting more crowded, and the stakes, they've never been higher. In this episode, we'll break it down. We'll explore how the lines between war and peace are disappearing, how technology is shaping modern conflict, and how societies, not just militaries, will be forced to adapt. But before we dive into the details, let me remind you to like, share, and review the podcast. Your support keeps this show alive and helps us reach more people who need to hear this. So buckle up, folks. Grab that coffee, tea, or, if it's been one of those weeks, something a bit stronger. It's time to chart the unknown waters of a war without boundaries. All right, let's get into it. When we think about war, most of us picture the classics. Soldiers storming beaches, tanks roaring across battlefields, and iconic moments like the raising of the flag at Iwo Jima. But here's the thing. Those days are gone. The lines between war and peace are no longer just blurry. They're practically non-existent. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine waking up tomorrow and your city's power grid is out. No lights, no internet, no gas pumps. You'd think, oh, the power company messed up again, but nope. This time, it's intentional. A cyber attack, launched halfway across the world by some faceless hacker, has just paralyzed your entire region. No troops landed, no bombs dropped. But make no mistake, you're at war. This is the reality of modern conflict. Wars are no longer declared with pomp and ceremony. They're initiated with keystrokes and algorithms. Today's battlefield isn't just dirt and concrete. It's the digital networks that connect our world. From power grids to financial systems to your everyday Wi-Fi router, everything is a target, and everything is a weapon. Cyber warfare, the silent offensive. Cyber warfare isn't just a subplot in your favorite action movie. It's happening right now. Let's take a look at Ukraine. When Russia decided to flex its muscles, it didn't just send tanks and troops. It also launched a cyber onslaught. Banks, government websites, even the water supply were targeted. These aren't just nuisances. They're strategies designed to disrupt, destabilize, and disarm without firing a single bullet. Think about it. If you can cripple a nation's infrastructure, you can weaken its ability to fight back. And the scary part? Cyber attacks are cheap, hard to trace, and can be launched from anywhere. Forget fighter jets. Your next adversary might be a teenager with a laptop and a grudge. The role of propaganda in the digital age. Now let's talk about something that's been around forever. Propaganda. It's as old as war itself, but in the age of social media, it's gone nuclear. Platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok aren't just for memes and dance challenges anymore. They're battlegrounds for hearts and minds. During the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we saw an unprecedented weaponization of information. Fake news, deepfakes, and viral misinformation spread faster than governments could respond. The goal? To confuse, divide, and demoralize the enemy. And it's not just happening overseas. If you've ever found yourself yelling at your uncle on Facebook over some news article, guess what? You're already in the crossfire. The scary part is how effective this is. In many ways, it's easier to destabilize a nation with a tweet storm than with an army. Divide the people, erode trust in institutions, and watch the chaos unfold. No tanks required, the civilian front line. Here's where things get personal. In this new era of war, civilians aren't just collateral damage, they're participants. Whether it's ransomware attacks on hospitals, fake news shaping elections, or economic sanctions that ripple through entire populations, everyday people are on the front lines. Take the U.S. as an example. Our supply chains are already stretched thin, and our infrastructure, let's face it, is held together with duct tape and a prayer. Imagine the chaos if these systems were deliberately targeted. It wouldn't just be soldiers scrambling. It'd be all of us trying to adapt to a world where the conveniences we take for granted are suddenly gone. A war without borders. And then there's the ultimate kicker. Borders don't matter anymore. In the past, wars were fought over land, resources, or political ideology. Today, it's about systems, financial systems, communication systems, and even societal systems. These are global by nature, which means no country is safe. You might live thousands of miles away from the hot zone, but if your bank accounts get frozen because of sanctions or your grocery prices skyrocket due to supply chain disruptions, guess what? You're in the fight too. So, what does this mean for us? Here's the optimistic spin. Just because the rules of war have changed doesn't mean we're powerless. Adaptation is the name of the game. Nations are already investing in cyber defenses, misinformation countermeasures, and resilient strategies to protect civilians. But it's not just up to governments, it's up to us as individuals to stay informed, stay skeptical, and stay prepared. You don't need to be a soldier to play a role in this. In fact, the most important battle might be for your own critical thinking skills. If you can resist falling for fake news, protect your digital assets, and build a community that can weather disruptions, you're already winning. That's the new reality of warfare. It's not pretty, but understanding it is the first step to surviving and thriving in a world where peace and conflict are no longer clearly defined. If you were to picture the cutting-edge battlefield of World War III, it wouldn't look like rows of tanks or troops charging into no man's land. Instead, you'd see something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Swarms of drones buzzing like mechanical bees, artificial intelligence orchestrating entire campaigns, and autonomous machines making life or death decisions faster than any human ever could. Welcome to the era of tech-dominated warfare where the future isn't tomorrow, it's happening now. The rise of the machines. Let's start with drones. These things have gone from cool toys you can fly in your backyard to deadly precision instruments that can change the outcome of wars. In the Ukraine-Russia conflict, drones have played a starring role. Both sides are using them to scout enemy positions, drop explosives, and even disrupt air defense systems. And here's the kicker. These aren't just government-built military drones. Many are off-the-shelf models that you could order on Amazon. Think about it. For a few $100, you can buy a drone, slap on some DIY mods, and suddenly you've got a weapon capable of taking out enemy equipment or gathering intelligence. This levels the playing field in ways we've never seen before. Small nations, or even non-state actors like insurgent groups, now have access to tools that can challenge even the most advanced militaries. But drones are just the tip of the iceberg. Enter artificial intelligence. AI, the new commander-in-chief. Artificial intelligence is no longer just for powering chatbots and curating your Netflix recommendations. It's becoming the brains behind modern warfare. Imagine an AI system that can analyze satellite imagery, predict enemy movements, and recommend strategies, all in real time. That's not science fiction, that's reality. The US, China, and Russia are pouring billions into AI-driven systems. These systems can coordinate drone swarms, identify targets, and even decide the best time to launch an attack. And while this sounds efficient, it's also terrifying. Why? Because we're putting machines in charge of decisions that have human consequences. Here's a scenario to chew on. A drone swarm, controlled by AI, is tasked with taking out an enemy convoy. Suddenly, civilians enter the area. Does the AI recognize them as non-combatants and call off the strike? Or does it follow its programming and proceed with the mission? These are the moral dilemmas we're facing, and the answers aren't clear. Autonomous weapons, the double-edged sword. Autonomous weapons take this to another level. These are systems that can identify, track, and engage targets without human intervention. Think robotic tanks, submarines, and even flying killbots. If you're thinking, this sounds like the start of a bad Terminator movie, you're not alone. Proponents argue that autonomous weapons can reduce casualties by keeping human soldiers out of harm's way. But the flip side is just as compelling and much darker. If one side unleashes a fully autonomous arsenal, what's to stop the other from doing the same? We could end up in an arms race where the goal isn't just to outgun the enemy, but to outcode them. And here's the scary part. These systems don't require massive armies or traditional infrastructure. A rogue nation, a terrorist group, or even a well-funded corporation could theoretically develop and deploy autonomous weapons. The barriers to entry are lower than ever, and the consequences could be catastrophic. The psychological battlefield. But it's not just about the hardware, it's about the psychology of warfare. Drones and AI have introduced an element of fear that's hard to quantify. Imagine living under the constant hum of drones overhead, knowing they could strike at any moment. It's not just physically draining, it's emotionally and mentally destabilizing. And that's the point. Modern warfare isn't just about winning battles, it's about breaking the will of your enemy, the global drone race. Now let's talk geopolitics. The US, China, and Russia are in a full-blown drone arms race. China, for example, has been mass-producing drones and selling them to countries around the world, creating a new kind of arms proliferation. Meanwhile, the U.S. is focused on developing higher-end, more advanced systems, and Russia, they're somewhere in the middle, leveraging drones heavily in their conflicts in Ukraine and Syria. But it's not just state actors. Private companies and non-state groups are entering the game, making it harder to control who has access to these technologies. Remember when nuclear weapons were only in the hands of a few countries? Drones and AI are the opposite. Almost anyone with enough resources can get in on the action. What does this mean for society? Here's where things get interesting and a little hopeful. Technology is a double-edged sword. While it can be used for destruction, it can also be harnessed for good. Drones can deliver medical supplies to remote areas. AI can predict natural disasters. The same tools that could lead us to war could also lead us to solutions for some of humanity's biggest challenges. But, and this is a big but, we have to be vigilant. The line between innovation and exploitation is thin. Governments, tech companies, and international organizations need to step up, create ethical frameworks, and establish clear boundaries for how these technologies are used. Adaptation is key. So what can we do? First, we need to understand that this isn't some far-off problem. The drone buzzing in your neighbor's backyard could one day be a key player in a global conflict. Staying informed, advocating for ethical use of technology, and investing in our own resilience, both as individuals and as a society, are more important than ever. The evolution of combat is happening at breakneck speed, and while it's unsettling, it also gives us a chance to rewrite the rules. The question is, will we rise to the occasion or let the machines dictate our future? Let's switch gears and talk about a type of warfare that doesn't involve bullets or bombs, but can be just as devastating: economic warfare. It's the kind of conflict that doesn't make headlines as often, but can bring a nation to its knees without a single soldier crossing its borders. In World War III, this battlefield might not just complement traditional combat, it could completely overshadow it. Economic warfare is the quiet killer of modern conflicts. It's the art and science of using financial systems, trade, and resources as weapons. And make no mistake, it's happening all around us right now. Sanctions, the modern siege weapon. Let's start with sanctions, the go-to tool in the playbook of economic warfare. When Russia invaded Ukraine, what did the West do? It didn't send troops. It sent sanctions. The idea was simple: cut Russia off from global markets, choke its economy, and force it to reconsider its actions. And to an extent, it worked. Russian banks were removed from the SWIFT system, oligarchs found their yachts confiscated, and foreign investments vanished almost overnight. But here's the catch: sanctions are a double-edged sword. Yes, they hurt the targeted nation, but they can also boomerang back and affect the countries imposing them. Take energy, for example. Europe's sanctions on Russian oil and gas were supposed to hurt Moscow, but they also caused an energy crisis across Europe. Prices skyrocketed, and ordinary people bore the brunt of the pain. It's like setting fire to your enemy's fields, but accidentally burning your own in the process. Sanctions are effective, but they're not foolproof. Nations like Russia and China have been building systems to bypass Western financial controls. The rise of alternative payment systems and cryptocurrency networks means that economic warfare is becoming a lot more complex and harder to control. Weaponizing trade. Then there's trade. What happens when one nation controls the supply chain for critical goods? It's like holding all the cards in a poker game. Take China, for example. They're not just a manufacturing powerhouse. They dominate the production of rare earth minerals, materials essential for everything from smartphones to fighter jets. If tensions escalate over Taiwan, China doesn't need to fire a single shot. It could simply cut off the supply of these minerals and leave entire industries in the West scrambling. And let's not forget about food. Ukraine, often called the breadbasket of Europe, saw its agricultural exports disrupted by the war. This wasn't just a problem for Europe, it rippled across the globe, leading to food shortages in places as far away as Africa and the Middle East. The message is clear. Controlling trade means controlling power, the dollar's role in the global chessboard. Here's where things get really interesting: the US dollar. For decades, the dollar has been the king of global finance. It's the currency of choice for international trade, the backbone of global markets, and quite frankly, one of the US's most potent weapons. But that dominance is under threat. Russia and China have been pushing for a de-dollarization of the global economy. They're striking deals to trade in their own currencies, creating alternatives to the SWIFT banking system, and even hoarding gold as a hedge. If the dollar loses its status as the world's reserve currency, the U.S. could lose one of its most significant advantages in economic warfare. This isn't just speculation. It's already happening in small ways. For example, China recently inked a deal with Brazil to trade in yuan instead of dollars. It's a crack in the dam, and if more nations follow suit, it could reshape the global economic order in ways that are hard to predict. Economic warfare's impact on society. So what does this mean for the average person? It means that even if you're thousands of miles away from the battlefield, you're not immune. Economic warfare doesn't just target governments, it trickles down to everyday life. Higher gas prices, disrupted supply chains, and inflation are just some of the ways it hits home. Let's take a hypothetical scenario. Imagine the U.S. gets into a serious trade war with China. Suddenly, the price of electronics, clothing, and even basic household goods skyrockets because most of it is manufactured overseas. Your paycheck doesn't stretch as far, businesses shut down, and the economy slows to a crawl. This isn't just an inconvenience. It's a form of modern warfare. Opportunities in the chaos. Now, before you start Googling how to live off the grid, let's talk about the silver lining. Economic warfare, for all its risks, also forces innovation and resilience. When supply chains are disrupted, nations are compelled to find alternatives. For example, the push for domestic manufacturing in the U.S. has gained momentum precisely because of these pressures. Economic warfare also highlights the importance of diversification, not just for nations, but for individuals. Investing in skills, resources, and networks can help you weather economic storms, whether they're caused by global conflict or not. Adapting to the new normal. The key takeaway here is adaptability. Nations, businesses, and individuals alike need to recognize that economic warfare isn't a future threat. It's already here. By staying informed, building resilience, and thinking critically about the interconnectedness of global systems, we can not only survive this new era of conflict, but also thrive in it. Economic warfare may not involve explosions or casualties, but its effects are just as profound. In a world where money, trade, and resources have become the weapons of choice, the battle is far closer to home than we'd like to admit. If the wars of the past were fought on distant battlefields, the wars of the future will be fought in your backyard, on your smartphone, and even in your pantry. Total war is no longer a phrase reserved for nations with tanks and trenches. It's a reality where societies themselves become both the battlefield and the participants. And as uncomfortable as it is to admit, most of us aren't ready. Let's break it down. Societal resilience is the ability of a community, a nation, or even an individual to absorb shocks, adapt to challenges, and come out stronger. Think of it as the immune system of a society. In a world where World War III might not involve a formal declaration of war, but rather a series of crises, cyberattacks, supply chain breakdowns, and disinformation campaigns, resilience is no longer optional. It's survival. The new civilian frontline. Let's start with the obvious. Civilians are no longer bystanders. In World War II, the home front was about rationing, factory work, and victory gardens. In World War III, the home front might look like this: waking up to find your bank accounts frozen, your grocery store shelves empty, and your newsfeed flooded with propaganda designed to pit you against your neighbors. Take Ukraine, for instance. Civilians there aren't just enduring a war, they're actively participating in it. From digital volunteers coordinating humanitarian aid to ordinary people converting cars into makeshift ambulances, the lines between soldier and civilian have blurred. And while this is inspiring, it's also a reminder that the burden of war now falls on all of us. The fragility of modern life. Here's the harsh truth. Our modern way of life isn't built for resilience. It's built for convenience. Think about it. Most of us have no idea where our food comes from, how our water gets to the tap, or what would happen if the power grid went down for more than a day. And yet, these are the systems that underpin everything we do. Let's talk supply chains. They're the lifeblood of our economy, and they're more vulnerable than we like to admit. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we got a small taste of this vulnerability. Remember when toilet paper was a hot commodity? Now imagine that, but with food, medicine, and fuel. That's what happens when supply chains break down in a total war scenario. And it's not just physical goods. Our reliance on digital infrastructure is another Achilles heel. A single cyber attack on a major power grid or financial institution could send ripples through society that would take years to recover from. It's not a question of if this will happen. It's a question of when. The role of disinformation. If supply chain disruptions and cyber attacks are the physical blows of total war, then disinformation is the psychological one. And let me tell you, it's just as devastating. We've all seen it. Fake news articles spreading like wildfire, deepfake videos that look eerily real, and social media algorithms that seem designed to sow division. In a total war scenario, this isn't just annoying, it's catastrophic. Trust in institutions, neighbors, and even family members can erode to the point where society becomes ungovernable. And when that happens, the enemy doesn't need to invade. They've already won. Lessons from history. So what can we learn from history? Look at the Blitz in London during World War II. Despite nightly bombings, the city didn't descend into chaos. Why? Because the government invested in air raid shelters, communities came together to support one another, and people found ways to adapt. Resilience isn't about avoiding hardship. It's about facing it head-on and refusing to break. Contrast that with Hurricane Katrina in 2005, where poor planning, lack of resources, and social inequality turned a natural disaster into a humanitarian crisis. The lesson here is clear. Resilience isn't just about having the right tools, it's about having the right mindset and systems in place before disaster strikes. How can we build resilience today? Now let's bring it home. What can we do to make our societies and ourselves more resilient in the face of total war? Invest in local communities. The stronger your local community, the better equipped you'll be to handle disruptions. This means getting to know your neighbors, supporting local businesses, and building networks of trust. Strengthen infrastructure. Governments and organizations need to prioritize the resilience of critical systems like power grids, water supplies, and healthcare networks. This isn't flashy, but it's essential. Practice digital hygiene. We live in a world where your data is as valuable as gold. Learn to spot disinformation, secure your online accounts, and think twice before sharing that inflammatory post. Diversify resources. Whether it's as simple as starting a small garden or as complex as advocating for energy independence, diversifying our resources is key to surviving supply chain disruptions. Foster a resilient mindset. Finally, resilience starts between your ears. Practice adaptability, learn new skills, and remember that hardship is a part of life, not an end to it. Hope in the chaos. Now, I know this all sounds pretty grim, but here's the good news. Humans are incredibly resilient. History is full of examples of communities coming together in the face of adversity, finding innovative solutions and emerging stronger. Whether it's rebuilding after a natural disaster or adapting to a new way of life, we've done it before, and we can do it again. The key is to start now. Resilience isn't something you can build overnight. It's a process. And while we can't predict every challenge, we can prepare for the unexpected by strengthening the foundations of our society today. Societal resilience isn't just a buzzword. It's the backbone of our survival in a world that's more interconnected and more fragile than ever. The question is, will we rise to the challenge, or will we let our systems and ourselves crumble under the weight of modern conflict? Wars have always been about more than just guns and battleships. They're about ideas, ideologies, the invisible forces that shape our values, politics, and decisions have sparked revolutions, toppled empires, and driven humanity to both its greatest and darkest moments. In the context of World War III, ideology won't just be a factor, it could be the driving force. And when combined with the volatile issue of border insecurity, it creates a perfect storm. The ideological divide, democracy versus authoritarianism. Let's start with the elephant in the room. The world today is deeply polarized not just within nations, but between them. On one side, you have democracies that champion freedom, human rights, and open markets. On the other, you have authoritarian regimes that prioritize control, stability, and centralized power. These aren't just political systems, they're competing visions for how humanity should live. The tension between these ideologies is palpable. Look at China and the US, two global superpowers with fundamentally different systems. China's authoritarian model has proven effective in achieving rapid economic growth and technological advancements, but it comes at the cost of individual freedoms. The US, despite its flaws, represents a system where those freedoms are sacrosanct. The competition between these ideologies is playing out in trade wars, technological races, and proxy conflicts. And let's not forget the power of ideology to inspire or manipulate people. During the Cold War, it was capitalism versus communism. Today, the battle lines are drawn between populism, nationalism, and globalism. These aren't abstract concepts. They're the lenses through which people see the world and decide who they trust, who they follow, and who they fight against. Border insecurity. A pressure cooker. Now let's layer in border insecurity. Borders have always been flashpoints in conflicts, but in today's interconnected world, they've become both more important and more porous. Take the U.S.-Mexico border as an example. The influx of migrants isn't just a humanitarian issue, it's a security challenge, a political powder keg, and a potential vulnerability in the context of global conflict. Here's the thing about borders. They're not just physical lines on a map, they're symbolic. They represent sovereignty, security, and identity. When borders are breached, whether by migrants, smugglers, or even enemy forces, it shakes the foundation of a nation's sense of control. And in a World War III scenario, these breaches could be exploited not just for tactical gains, but for ideological ones. Consider how adversaries might use border insecurity as a tool of destabilization, flooding a nation with refugees or infiltrating sleeper agents through porous borders isn't just plausible, it's likely. And the effects wouldn't just be felt in terms of security. Social cohesion, political stability, and trust in government would all take a hit. The weaponization of migration. Migration itself isn't inherently bad. Let's be clear about that. But in the wrong hands, it can be weaponized. We've already seen examples of this in Europe, where migration crises have been exploited by both state and non-state actors to stoke fear, division, and political chaos. Take Belarus, for example, which deliberately funneled migrants to the Polish border in 2021, creating a humanitarian and political crisis. This wasn't just a stunt, it was a calculated move to pressure the European Union and destabilize its member states. Now imagine this tactic on a global scale. In the context of World War III, the weaponization of migration could become a strategic tool for undermining adversaries, the role of ideological warfare. And then there's ideological warfare itself. This isn't just about tanks and drones. It's about winning hearts and minds. In a hyper-connected world where social media reaches billions in seconds, ideology spread like wildfire. Misinformation, propaganda, and disinformation are the new weapons, and they're being deployed every day. Look at the U.S., the divide between political ideologies, left versus right, progressive versus conservative, isn't just a domestic issue, it's a vulnerability. Foreign adversaries have already exploited these divisions through cyber campaigns designed to deepen the rift. In World War III, this kind of ideological warfare won't just be a sideshow, it'll be a main event. And let's not forget the global reach of ideologies. Groups like ISIS have proven that even non-state actors can use ideology as a weapon to recruit, inspire, and destabilize on an international scale. Ideological warfare doesn't respect borders, which makes it all the more dangerous. The fragility of unity. The scary part about ideological divides and border insecurity is how easily they can undermine unity. And unity, let's face it, is what makes societies resilient. Without it, even the strongest nations can crumble from within. The question is, how do we maintain unity in a world that seems determined to tear us apart? Opportunities for adaptation. Here's where the optimism comes in. Ideological divides and border challenges, while daunting, also present opportunities for adaptation and growth. First, we need to address the root causes of these issues. Why are people migrating en masse? Why are societies so divided? The answers to these questions aren't simple, but they're essential for finding lasting solutions. Second, we need to build systems that are flexible enough to handle these challenges without breaking. Whether it's through better immigration policies, more effective counter-propaganda efforts, or investments in social cohesion, the solutions are there. We just need the will to implement them. The role of the individual. And let's not forget the role of the individual. In a world where ideologies and borders are weaponized, your actions matter, whether it's voting for leaders who prioritize unity, engaging in meaningful dialogue with people who hold different views, or simply staying informed. Each of us has a role to play. Hope amid the chaos. Borders may be fragile and ideologies may clash, but history shows us that societies can adapt, evolve, and overcome. The key is to focus on what unites us rather than what divides us. If we can do that, we'll not only survive the challenges of World War III, we'll thrive in its aftermath. Ideology and border insecurity are two of the most potent forces shaping our world today. They're not just challenges, they're opportunities to redefine who we are as a society and how we move forward. my friends, brings us to the end of this episode of Full Spectrum Frontiers. Today, we explored the ever-changing dynamics of warfare, from blurred battle lines and tech-driven combat to the critical roles of societal resilience, economic power, and ideological divides. World War III, if it ever happens, won't look like the wars of the past. It'll be fought in cyberspace, through financial systems, and within the hearts and minds of people across the globe. But here's the takeaway. This isn't just about governments and armies, it's about us. As individuals, as communities, and as nations, we have the power to adapt, to prepare, and to thrive. The challenges are real, but so are the opportunities. By understanding these dynamics and fostering resilience, we can face whatever the future holds with courage and clarity. So, what's next? The frontier we've just explored is vast, and there's still so much ground to cover. But before we dive into the next big topic, I have a favor to ask. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to like, share, and review the podcast. Your feedback not only keeps this show going, but helps spread the word to others who need to hear it. And hey, let's keep this conversation going. Reach out to me with your thoughts, questions, or topics you'd like to explore in future episodes. You can find me on social media or through the podcast website. Your voice matters. It's what makes Full Spectrum Frontiers more than just a podcast. It's a community. Until next time, stay informed, stay resilient, and remember, the frontier's vast, but together we can navigate it. I'm Bennett Tanton, signing off from Full Spectrum Frontiers. Take care, and I'll see you on the next episode.
It's just you, me, and the odds. We stuck together, we two peas in a pod. You dealt a bad hand, I'm there seizing the cards. We'll never be separated till we see in the gods. We've been low together, high forever. Long as we go together, we'll die whenever. Be a light, couldn't let the darkness try you ever. Truth in my word, you I lie to never. And when the world gets a little too hard, wipe your eyes, put away your sorrow. When it's war, I'll be leading the charge, and I'll be still fighting for you tomorrow. Yeah, even with a blindfold or in different time zones, could find my way to you with my eyes closed. There's nothing between us. Go to Mars or Venus, stand in front of every one of them rocks they slinging and being shit. Yeah.